نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I have chosen to start from Juz 29. Alhamdulillah, many of us have studied probably Juz 30 at the Amma many times over. My hope is we can start from Surah Al-Mulk and Juz 29, go backwards to 28 and so on and so forth. And inshallah, at the very end, come back to Juz 30 to wrap up, inshallah, Aziz. So let's start with some brief outline of the surah. So it's a Makki surah, surah number 67, 30 ayahs, 2 rukus. And really the meaning of mulk is the dominion, the property that you have control over. And the name is driven from the word that comes in the beginning, Tabarakallahu zi biyadihil mulk. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his dominion is mentioned over the heavens, the earth in the beginning of the surah. There are other names that are given to this surah, Al-Mani'a, Al-Mujib. And this is referring to the virtue of Surah Mulk, as it comes in the narration, Tirmidhi, Hiya al-Mani'atu, Hiya al-Munjiyatu, Tunjih min adhab al-qabr. So it is the surah that was rescued from the torment of the grave. And it comes in another narration that there's a surah in the Quran with 30 verses, which would intercede for his companion. And the companion is the one who recites it until he's forgiven. That is Tabarakallahu zi biyadihil mulk. So we are encouraged to recite it, make it a habit before going to bed, make it your last action. Doesn't have to be, as long as you just do it on a daily basis, inshallah, we'll get this reward and virtue. Now, what's the connection of Surah Mulk from, let's say, in the continuity of the Quran? So the prior surah is Surah Tahrim. And in Surah Tahrim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, towards the end of it, makes references to 4 women. 2 are faithful and 2 are unfaithful. So we learn about the wives of Nuh and Lut alayhi salam, which turned out to be disbelievers, despite they were connected to the prophets. And Maryam and Aisha alayhi salam, they were in very extreme situations, and yet they remained steadfast. Asr alayhi salam, she was the wife of Pharaoh, and she remained steadfast. And Maryam alayhi salam, she was faced with a very challenging situation where people were questioning her piety because of the miraculous birth of Isa alayhi salam, and yet she maintained her belief in her iman. And think about this, it's not your connection to a pious person that matters. That's really the message in the previous surah. The wives of Nuh and Lut alayhi salam, they were wives of Anbiya, and even that could not save them from the punishment that they would get. That could not just be enough for them to maintain their belief in Iman. They actually turned out to be disbelievers. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing how He has full control. He has the power and control on all matters, and things may look very strange to you, and that's just because of our inability to grasp the deep wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And same theme gets continued in Surah Mulk, which depicts the knowledge, wisdom, sovereignty, and wonders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in brief, what is the surah talking about? So the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His perfect knowledge and power, punishment. There's mentions of punishment for disbelievers and reward for believers, and of course, encouragement and the effort and trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for sustenance. So inshallah, we'll continue with our word. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير. So blessed is He in whose hand is the dominion of the universe and who has power over everything. The word Tabarak comes in many other verses of Quran. In Surah Araf, Tabarakallahu Rabbul Alameen. Surah Furqan starts with Tabarak alladhi nazzala al-Furqan. In Surah Rahman, Tabarak asmu rabbika dhil jalali wal ikram. What does that mean? So Tabarak is derived from baraka, which means literally to grow and increase. And here, when it is mentioned with reference to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it means the highest of all the respects. So some of the synonyms could be ta'azama, taqaddasa, tanazzaha, ta'ala. All of them are referring to the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you think about the barakah, it actually could be thought of in two different ways. I mean, one, when it comes as a sifa, as an attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as in the izzatullah, rahmatullah, barakatullah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's majesty, His mercy, His barakah. And it can also be thought of in the context of a makhluk or a creation. So Baytullah, Kitabullah, or we give du'as, Barakallahu fi, Ramadan al-Mubarak. All these things are in reference to a particular creation. And really what that is referring to is the barakah has been put into those things. By who? By Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the word tabarak, that verb, can only be used for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one else has the power to put barakah in anything except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The next one, biyadihi. So yad means hand. And one thing we should understand in different verses of the Quran, it comes a reference to something physical about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In this case, it's biyadihi, the hand of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It comes in also another surah, Surah Fath, Yadullahi fawqa aydihim. In Surah Baqarah, in Ayat al-Kursi, we see, Wasa'a kursiyuhu as-samawati wal-ard, His chair. So all of these things, we cannot understand the true meaning of them. We should not think of them as similar to how we understand those things exist in this world, meaning our own hands or our chair. Ta'ala, Allah Ta'ala is above and beyond such imagination. At the same time, we cannot negate that they exist. I mean, they're mentioned in the Quran. So we have to believe that they exist. We just do not know what they truly mean. And as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Al Imran about mutashabihat, and He says, what should we do? I mean, people who are rasikhun, who are truly guided, who are firm, what did they do? They actually say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ يَقُولُونَ آمَنَّا بِهِ كُلٌّ مِّنْ عِنْدِ رَبِّنَا. So we believe in everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us. It's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We believe in it. We may not understand the true meaning of it. Next, الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور. Who created death and life that He might try you as to which of you is better indeed. He is the most mighty, the most forgiving. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created life and death. And this is actually referred to the two states of human beings. If you think about it, it encompasses all the stages in between of our life in this world. So notice death is mentioned before life. And this is not just a coincidence. I mean, we see in other places in Surah Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كُنْتُمْ أَمْوَاتًا فَأَحْيَاكُمْ ثُمَّ يُمِيتُكُمْ ثُمَّ يُحْيِيكُمْ ثُمَّ إِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. While you are lifeless and He gave you life, then He will make you die. And then He will make you live again and live again. And then to Him you will be returned. Or just in Surah Rum, يُحْيِي الْأَرْضَ بَعْدَ مَوْتِهَا, He gives life to the earth after its death. Then we look at the second part of the ayah, which is لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. And what that is referring to is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to judge us on who does good deeds. And the important demarcation here is it's not about the quantity of deeds, it's about the quality of deeds. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be weighing our deeds, not just counting. We should understand a couple of things here. I mean, there are two conditions for actions to be accepted. An action has to be khalis, for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it has to be sawab, with the sad, sawab, so it has to be correct, according to the sunnah of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when you perform an action, it has to be done with sincerity and correctness. And if you think about these two things, you have like 4 combinations that can happen regarding any action. An action can be sincere and correct, meaning according to Sunnah, it will be accepted. And that's a desirable state. Then you can have an action done with sincerity, but is not done according to Sunnah. It will be rejected. I mean, what could be an example? Think about the bid'ah that's unfortunately common now, prostration to graves. I mean, you could see people out of sincerity, I mean, they're trying to get close to Allah, and in that understanding or misunderstanding, they're thinking of doing prostration to the graves. And again, the second part of it is not from the Sunnah. We cannot prostrate to anyone except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is rejected and punished, as a matter of fact. Then you get into the third type, which is not sincere act, but done according to Sunnah. Even that is not accepted, and you wonder, well, what happened there? So think about the salah, I mean, of munafiq. So if you're, or just recitation, if you're doing these, praiseworthy acts, recommended acts, but you're doing it for fame, you're doing it to elevate your status among others, showing off, then that is not accepted. And finally, obvious, but if something does not have the sincerity and neither is from Sunnah, definitely should be avoided. I mean, what comes to mind is different events we see around us, that are not from Islam. I mean, Halloween is a perfect event to think about, where we see many Muslims celebrating it, and yet this is following the tradition of pagans, and this is neither from our, Sunnah, and again, it's a worldly act and should be avoided. And what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about actions that are not accepted and done without sincerity and without correctness? As it comes in Surah Furqan, وَقَدِمْنَا إِلَى مَا عَمِلُوا مِنْ عَمَلٍ فَجَعَلْنَاهُ هَبَاءً مَنْثُورًا. So, and we will proceed to whatever deeds they did and will turn them into scattered dust, because they will be meaningless. So let's come back to the ayah. لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. So now you must be wondering, well, what does that mean for, you might be doing a work, an action with sincerity, and you are doing it the proper way. Can there be different levels of reward for two people doing the same act with sincerity and correctness? Can there be different levels in it? And the fact is, yes. I mean, think about Salah as an example. I mean, you could have a person who does his entire Salah with the focus and the khushu in all the steps of the prayer. And he gets more reward compared to a person who starts with focus and khushu, but gets distracted along the way. I mean, similarly, think about, this. I mean, if you're doing your Salah and you're doing all even the mustahabs in the Salah, then you get more reward compared to someone maybe not paying a lot of attention to detail. That gives that much more reward to the Salah. Perhaps, he's saying only 3 times tasbih, other person says 5 or 7 times. So you could see, you can be doing the correct action with sincerity, and yet you will be rewarded by the levels, depending on how much sincerity goes into it and how much correct or let's say mustahabs are added to it.